Palestine to discuss with us the ongoing Israeli genocide and the Nakba. We are really honored to have them all here. We are honored to understand more, to deepen our understanding of the years of conflict, of the years of the Israeli colonial apartheid system that we in the United States have supported. We're angry and we're saddened, but we're very grateful to have you here today. So just to introduce myself, I am Julie Jolin. I lived in Cairo. I was speaking earlier with some of the panelists about that. And then I went to medical school here in the United States. I have many friends and family in the Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. And my daughter is in Amman, Jordan right now and working and studying Arabic. I will introduce the panelists right before they speak. I think they will speak for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Julie, before you do that, let me just make a comment.
Sure.
So we are doing simultaneous interpretation
Yes.
between English and Arabic. So everyone should choose their language. And there should be an icon at the bottom of your Zoom window that says interpretation. And you have to click that icon and choose English or Arabic. The message we sent earlier said that Arabic wouldn't be on the list and you should choose French. That was wrong. You can choose Arabic or English, or you can just choose to hear the original languages if you understand both languages. If you don't see an interpretation by icon, try clicking on the More button, which has 3 little dots, and there should be an interpretation option on that menu. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Some of our speakers will be presenting in English, others in Arabic.
Thank you, Cole. And I wanted also to introduce Cole. I'm sure all of you know him from MAPA as the administrative director at this point. And then also I wanted to thank Jeff Klein, who really coordinated and made this webinar possible, and he will be speaking as the time goes. So, so should we go ahead and start with our first panelist? Yeah, and Lubnah, I was thinking you could go first. So Lubnah Shomali, she's an advocacy manager for the BADIL Resource Center for Palestinian Residency and Refugee Rights. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Julie. And I'd also like to thank MAPA and Cole and Jeff for helping us put all this together. And I'm very honored to be here as well, and very happy to be here also with my fellow speakers. I'm just going to jump right into it. There really can be no denial about what's happening in the Gaza Strip today. For over a year, the world has been watching a live-streamed genocide perpetrated by the Israeli colonial apartheid regime, with not only complete impunity, but with undeniable support of powerful Western states. And at the top of that list is the United States. So the US and its allies, mainly the UK, the EU, Germany, and France, continue to provide political, financial, military, logistical, and media support for all of Israel's crimes. And they have doubled down on this support since the start of the genocide in October. They have backed Israeli lies and propaganda with regards to its unfounded right of self-defense, the demonization and the dehumanization of the Palestinian people, the conflation of resistance and terrorism, and criticism of the Israeli regime with anti-Semitism. So the global hegemony of the United States and its allies has basically trampled the international legal order and its accountability mechanisms, causing them to fail. So if we look at all the mechanisms that the Palestinian people, with the support of the international solidarity movement, have attempted to activate, we have noticed that they have all failed the Palestinian people. And this is not something new. This is something that has been going on since the creation of the Israeli regime in 1948. So for example, if we look at the ICC, first of all, they took their time in investigating the crimes by Israeli perpetrators like Benjamin Netanyahu and Gallant. And they issued a ruling in June of 2024. And here we are, well, they recently issued the arrest warrants, but it took them 5 months. Took them 5 months. In comparison to when the perpetrator was Russia, the whole process from investigation to the issuance of the warrants took 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Whereas for Palestine, it took over 5 months. With regards to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, we saw provisional measures that were watered down with language that was almost self-censored on the Israeli genocide, where it was very clear in previous situations where the perpetrator wasn't Israel, that the language and the provisional measures came through much stronger. In its recent advisory opinion as well, the ICJ on Israeli policies and practices in the occupied Palestinian territory favored a conflict resolution approach and a political approach rather than using, excuse me, rather than using a rights-based approach to identify and recognize the situation in Palestine. They decontextualize the historic and current reality, ignoring everything before the 1967 occupation. They ignored the root causes, which is forced displacement, colonization, and apartheid. They restricted the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and return to the 1967 timeframe and territory and the Palestinian population there. They gave a partial and vague application of the legal frameworks and terminology of colonization and apartheid. And they also exceeded their mandate by endorsing political solutions absent of any legal foundations and the rights of the Palestinian people. Furthermore, they failed to provide concrete resolutions. And instead of providing the UN General Assembly, which was seeking the ICJ opinion with seeking practical recommendations from the ICJ opinion, the court referred the case, instead of providing recommendations, they basically threw that into the lap of the UNGA, the UN General Assembly.
I'm going to talk to you later, Coral, okay?
With regards to the UN General Assembly, they have refused to take any true positions and actions. For example, on the issue of UNRWA, there was no real statement or position to protect and defend the agency that the UN created to provide Palestinian refugees with their right to aid and services, as stipulated by international law and UN resolutions. Even when the and facilities, we saw no clear position, not even a statement coming out of the UNGA. The resolution that they put forth based on the ICJ advisory opinion is just as vague as the opinion itself, and it has the same skewed and limited approach. For example, when the perpetrator was the apartheid regime of South Africa, or when South Africa occupied and colonized Namibia, resolutions that were coming out of the NGA, of course, were very clear and succinct. And the UNGA did not shy away from using the appropriate frameworks or language. And they did provide concrete measures for states to follow. With regards to the UN Security Council, in addition, we saw numerous vetoes by the US and the mitigation of language to basically circumvent the obligations of the UN Security Council. So the US, in addition to its unwavering and increasing military and financial support to the Israeli regime, it has abused its veto power to shut down any resolutions that would hold the Israeli regime accountable. Within the 13 months of genocide, the US thwarted 3 resolutions. They intimidated and threatened states to fall in line with their political aims, and they granted political cover for every massacre, every violation, every crime. With regards to individual states and their actions, even those that consider themselves to be supporters of Palestine, have been satisfied only with condemnations and have taken no practical or effective measures to prevent or halt the genocide. And this, of course, includes Arab states. And then, of course, we cannot forget the role of the media. While continuing to underreport on the Gaza genocide being committed by the Israeli regime, mainstream media continues to regurgitate Israeli propaganda and provide unlimited screen time to Israelis and their supporters, while ensuring the absence of Palestinian voices and their supporters. This includes going so far as demonizing solidarity activists and twisting the facts on the ground to favor the Israeli colonial apartheid regime. And so, since the Nakba of 1948, and it has been an ongoing Nakba, the Israeli colonial apartheid regime has been the exception to the international accountability mechanisms since its creation. It has violated every rule and committed every crime under international law. It has enjoyed preferential treatment and the full unfettered support of Western colonial states since the beginning. It has degraded the UN, deliberately attacked UN facilities, and killed the largest number of UN staff. And now it has outlawed the only UN agency, UNRWA, that has the mandate and the capacity to be the lifeline to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and of course, Lebanon. And it has expanded its colonial aggression into Lebanon. And all of this has occurred without any consequences whatsoever. So it's very clear that the writing is on the wall. The blood of Palestinians is flowing in the streets of Palestine. The international solidarity movement has been demonized and suppressed by so-called democratic countries. The will of the people has been ignored. The international legal order has been trampled. And the only democracy, the only supposed democracy in the Middle East is a colonial apartheid regime that enjoys full impunity, privilege, and support from powerful Western states. From our perspective on the Palestinian side, our demands have remained unchanged since the start of the genocide in October, and they are crystal clear. We are asking, demanding a permanent and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon, unobstructed and full humanitarian aid and assistance led by UNRWA, dismantling the Israeli colonial apartheid regime, and decolonizing Palestine from the river to the sea. So we have to ask ourselves, after we have experienced over 1 year of genocide and over 76 years of ongoing Nakba, how do we get there? How do we make these demands happen? And the answer is sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. And of course, the support for Palestinian resistance and the liberation movement. And the way that we can get sanctions, states are not going to adhere to their legal obligations on their own. Throughout history and throughout time, it has always been people of conscience, human rights defenders and activists, civil society that have put pressure on states in order for them to fulfill their obligations under international law. And while we can commend the international solidarity movement for all their work and all their efforts and all their successes that they have achieved from the start of the genocide and even before, for their support of Palestine, it is very clear that we need to do more, that more needs to be done. And so we are asking the international solidarity movement to escalate their direct actions and implement actions that result in material cost. And so this is the only way to bring a ceasefire, to ensure that Palestinians, not only in the Gaza Strip, but elsewhere, have the support and assistance that they are entitled to from UNRWA. This is the only way we can dismantle the Israeli colonial-apartheid regime and to decolonize Palestine from the river to the sea. And I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lubnah. I have just learned so much in a very succinct way about the root causes, about the current conflict, and about what we can do as countries. I do wonder if Jeff has anything that he has to add to this, because this sounds so much of like what you talk about as well from here in the US.
Nothing to add. I just want to say it's my honor to know Lubnah and the other colleagues at BADIL, and my heart goes out to everyone in Palestine. And just to say that this is not just political, but Palestine is the moral issue of our time. And we have to make sure that the American people and our elected leaders are not able to look away. And that's our job here in the United States. So thank you all, and please continue.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you so much, Lubnah. I would like now to present the second panelist, and that is Mejd Azzah, who works as field director for Palestine 1 for 3, and is here today from Palestine, Bethlehem. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I'm going to speak about the situation since October 7th in the West Bank, because that is where we are. So although I currently reside in Bethlehem in Awda refugee camp, all of the West Bank was really affected after October 7th, after the war, the genocidal war that began on Gaza. Immediately the next day, roads were closed entirely between all major cities and towns in the West Bank. This caused a lot of stress and issues for Palestinians living in the West Bank. For example, we found it very difficult, especially in the beginning, first few months, getting products in and out, essential needs like medications, produce, different things became very difficult to find in the West Bank. This was not a coincidence. This is all done, purposely to create more hardship on the Palestinian people in general. Even visiting family in another city you had to think twice about it. Going to and from, for example, the south in Bethlehem, for example, to the north, to Ramallah, Jenin, Tulkarem, different areas, you really had to worry about how long the trip was going to take, because the roads were closed periodically. Some roads were completely closed off and have not been reopened since last year. Other roads have had flying checkpoints, which are more than the usual checkpoints that we have to go through anyways, which causes a lot of stress because you get stopped, the car gets checked, you get ID'd, you might get pulled to the side and strip searched, beaten, and even arrested. And so many people were very weary and had to really, calculate if this was something necessary to move around or not. And it was really a nightmare from the very beginning, and it still is, because the military has increased its incursions and raids on Palestinian cities in the West Bank. And it's more specifically on refugee camps. And I'm speaking about the refugee camps because that's where the majority of our work is. From the north to the south, we work in 5 different refugee camps. And we hear the same story getting repeated, where there's nightly and daily raids. The military will come in for no reason whatsoever to various homes, just destroying everything in the home, terrorizing people. The children have developed so much trauma over the past year, because they'll see their father or brother or someone from their family getting beaten and humiliated in front of them, and they can't do anything about it. So these things have caused a lot of issues in our communities here. These raids are not just, raids on the homes. Also, they are raids on the community as a whole, as a collective punishment, as a form of collective punishment, sorry, to kind of teach everyone a lesson that if you even think about speaking out or doing anything to voice your opinion about the occupation, you are going to be targeted, and everyone in your family will be targeted. For example, when in the beginning of the war, there were a lot of young men who wouldn't sleep inside their homes because they were hearing that their friends were being arrested for no reason whatsoever. And if they weren't found at their homes, the military would take someone from their family members, their father, their brother, and then hold them captive until that person turns themselves in. And again, there was no reason for these arrests to begin with. In other areas, for example, in the north, like Tulkarem, Jenin, Nablus, the refugee camps specifically have had even a harder time with house demolitions and increased violence inside of the camps. There's also been increased settler violence on Palestinian residents or citizens. You could be passing by a settlement in your car and rocks will be thrown at you. Settlers will start shooting at you because they've all been armed and it's allowed. And so again, so much has happened to increase the stress and really make it difficult for people to continue living here. And it's a form of forced displacement, but without having to pick you up and take you somewhere else, you kind of eventually choose, do I want to continue living this way or move out somewhere to be able to continue living? And so, and there has also been attacks on schools even from the settlers themselves. In the beginning of the war, schools had been closed periodically several times for several months, and which is against the right to education for our children. Just the other day, one of our partners in the West Bank, in Awda camp, was raided by the military, They took over the center, and they claimed it was for security reasons for one of the Jewish holidays. However, there was nothing really happening in the camp, or there was no reason for them to take over a cultural center. We also have a kindergarten in this center, and our children were not able to go inside. Imagine they were coming in the morning and they found heavily armed soldiers, over 20 of them, taking over the center and telling them that they cannot come inside. When one of our teachers asked, well, what do you think your child would, how would they react? These are just children. What's their crime? The soldier said, well, we're here to protect our children, and so they wouldn't be afraid. They know that we carry these guns to protect them, but your children know that we carry the guns to kill them. And he said it so coldly. And these are the kind of interactions that we have to go through on a daily basis with the military, with settlers. And again, because they've gotten the green light from the international community, and specifically from the US, to do whatever it is that they want to do without any regard to the Palestinian people, as if we're not human. And that's been the scariest part of the whole situation, is that nobody thinks about Palestinians as normal human beings who just want to go about their day, going to school, going to work, whatever it is. They have no rights here. All of their rights have kind of been dismissed by the international community. And that's why we need to, like Lubnah said, keep urging our governments, wherever we are, to stop, to put an end to the occupation, to put an end to the genocide, because people cannot continue living like this.
Thank you so much, Mejd, for sharing your chilling accounts of what is actually going on in the West Bank and Palestine. And the idea that guns are used to protect some children and to kill others is heartbreaking for all of us here. So really, it means so much to have you here today to tell us about this. And we are in solidarity with you. It hasn't been enough. We need to do more.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, do you have anything else to add there?
No, please continue.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're going to go now to a video, correct, Cole?
Yes.
Okay. And that will be of Hazim Al Madhoun. He's a researcher, Palestinian refugee in Gaza. And this will be translated or interpreted just similar to the other speakers and the other panelists. Thank you.
تواصل قوات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي من حرب الإبادة الجماعية على قطاع غزة منذ أكثر من عام، فهي عملت على تدمير كل شيء في قطاع غزة، وهذه نتيجة طبيعية بسبب الموقف العالمي والدولي باتجاه غزة، حيث أن الحرب على غزة هي فصل من فصول سياسة الاحتلال الإسرائيلي منذ أكثر من 17 عاما باتجاه قطاع غزة، حيث فرضت حصارا خانقا بالإضافة إلى تدمير كافة القطاعات الحيوية والقطاعات اللازمة للعيش لحياة السكان في قطاع غزة، فدمرت كافة القطاعات، وأهم هذه القطاعات هي القطاع الاقتصادي بالإضافة إلى القطاع الصحي وهو شريان الحياة في قطاع غزة، فعملت على تدمير كافة القطاعات الحيوية بشكل كامل، ولم تقف عند هذا الحد وهذه السياسة، بل تعدت ذلك وحدودها أيضا إلى ما هو أبعد من ذلك، إلى ارتكاب جرائم أكثر عدوانية، حيث قامت بتنفيذ 4 عمليات عسكرية كبرى، وهي أشبه ما تكون وارتكبت مجازر أشبه ما تكون بجرائم حرب على مدار أكثر من 10 سنوات، بدءا من عام 2008 في العملية العسكرية، مرورا إلى حرب 2012 والعملية العسكرية في 2014، بالوصول إلى العملية العسكرية في 2021، حيث أدى ذلك إلى قتل الآلاف من أبناء قطاع غزة، بالإضافة إلى إصابة العشرات الآلاف، بالإضافة إلى تدمير عدد كبير من البنية التحتية واستهداف منازل المواطنين الآمنين في بيوتهم، بالإضافة إلى استهداف تجمعات سكانية كاملة، فعاثت خرابا وتدميرا في قطاع غزة بشكل كامل، دون أي مساءلة أو محاسبة قانونية على هذه الجرائم التي تقوم فيها قوات الاحتلال بارتكابها، مما استباح ذلك أن تتغول في الدم الفلسطيني أكثر في جميع مناطق وجود الشعب الفلسطيني، وخاصة في قطاع غزة، حيث عملت على شن حرب الإبادة الجماعية، وهي الحرب الأكثر دموية وأكثر بشاعة وأكثر انتهاكا لقواعد وقوانين القانون الدولي، ولا سيما القانون الدولي الإنساني ولا التشريعات القضائية والدولية في العالم، حيث قامت هذه التشريعات وأقيمت هذه التشريعات والهيئات من أجل ضمان الأمن والسلم الدوليين، ولكن إسرائيل دائما ما تصور نفسها بأنها فوق القانون وفوق هذه التشريعات، ولا تكترث لأي مساءلة أو محاسبة قانونية، لذلك تعيث فسادا في الأراضي الفلسطينية المحتلة، وخاصة على وجه الخصوص في قطاع غزة، لتشل حرب الإبادة الجماعية في 7 من أكتوبر العام 2023، حيث بدأت هذه الحرب باتخاذ سياسة قصف المنازل على رؤوس ساكنيها وقانطيها، حيث قامت بتدمير منذ الأسبوع الأول مئات المنازل الذي تحوي لآلاف الأشخاص والسكان، حيث تم تدميرهم بشكل كامل. الأسبوع الأول لوحده في حرب الإبادة الجماعية خلف أكثر من 2700 شخص قتلوا نتيجة هذه السياسة القذرة، حيث أيضا بقي العديد من المئات من جثامين من قتلوا تحت أنقاض هذه البيوت، ولم يستطع أحد الوصول إليهم أو انتشالهم بسبب غزارة العدوان والقصف العشوائي. وأيضا تواصل قوات الاحتلال إلى الآن ارتكاب المجازر الدموية بحق المواطنين في جميع مناطق وجود في جميع مناطق قطاع غزة، ولا سيما المناطق التي ادعت بأنها إنسانية وآمنة، وقامت بتوجيه السكان إلى النزوح إليها، حيث كانت تستخدم قنابل ذات قدرات تدميرية هائلة وعالية، محدثة دمارا كبيرا ومحدثة خسائر فادحة، ولا سيما في أرواح المواطنين وممتلكاتهم، فهي تستهدف التجمعات السكانية والأعيان المدنية دون اكتراث لأي من المواثيق والشرائع الدولية، وخاصة اتفاقيات جنيف واتفاقية جنيف الرابعة، وكذلك تقوم بمحاربة المحكمة الجنائية، ولا سيما بضرورة اتخاذ الإجراءات التي من شأنها أن تمنع وقوع حرب أو حرب الإبادة الجماعية في قطاع غزة. ولم تقف عند هذا الحد، حيث قامت منذ اليوم الأول لحرب الإبادة الجماعية لقطع كافة الخدمات، ولا سيما أغلقت المعابر بشكل كامل، ومنعت من دخول الماء والغذاء إلى السكان المدنيين، كما صرح بذلك وزير الدفاع لدولة الاحتلال يواف جالانت عندما قال سنمنع الماء والغذاء عن سكان القطاع، وأغرق القطاع في أزمة ومن الجوع، وقد استخدم سلاح الجوع ضد الآمنين المدنيين، كما أغرق قطاع غزة بظلام دامس نتيجة قطع التيار الكهربائي منذ اليوم الأول، قطع المياه عن قطاع غزة. إلى الآن الأطفال والنساء وهم الفئة الأكثر تضررا من حرب الإبادة الجماعية يلجؤون إلى شرب المياه غير الصالحة للشرب. كذلك انتهجت سياسة الاحتلال منذ الشهر الأول لحرب الإبادة الجماعية إلى استهداف المستشفيات، وقد قررت بأن المستشفيات هدفا مشروعا لجيش الاحتلال، وهو ما يخالف القوانين والشرائع الدولية، حيث قامت في الأسبوع الثالث من شهر أكتوبر بقصف مستشفى الأهلي العربي وهو المعمداني على رؤوس من كانوا قانطي ونازحين، بالإضافة إلى الكوادر الطبية، حيث أدى إلى قتل أكثر من 500 شخص داخل أروقة هذا المستشفى دون مراعاة لأي حالة قانونية عالمية. ولم تقف عند هذا الحد، كما قامت باقتحام ومحاصرة مستشفى الشفاء وكذلك المستشفيات في شمال وصولا إلى مستشفيات جنوب غزة، وآخرهم مستشفى ناصر الذي قامت باقتحامه واعتقال العشرات من الكوادر الطبية. ولم تقف عند هذا الحل، بل قامت إلى تعمد إلى إنشاء المقابر الجماعية داخل باحات المستشفيات، حيث تم اكتشاف أكثر من 7 مقابر جماعية لأشخاص ومواطنين قتلوا نتيجة استهدافهم بشكل مباشر من قبل قوات جيش الاحتلال، ومنهم من وجد أثناء انتشالهم أنه قد دفن وهو حي. كان علامات تدل على ذلك، كانوا معصوبي الأعين بالإضافة إلى مكبلي الأيدي، فكانوا معتقلين وقد قام جيش الاحتلال بدفنهم وهم أحياء في جريمة من أبشع الجرائم التي يعاقب عليها القانون الدولي. إلى كل ذلك يحدث أمام مسمع ومرأى العالم، ولكن العالم لا يريد أن يسمع ولا يريد أن يشاهد هذه القذارات وهذا العدوان وهذا المجازر الوحشية التي ينفذها جيش الاحتلال، بالإضافة إلى سياسة القتل التي انتهجها والمجازر الدموية. استخدم كافة الوسائل والأساليب من أجل معاقبة السكان الفلسطينيين الغازيين في قطاع غزة، حيث منذ الأسبوع الأول لحرب الإبادة الجماعية وفي يوم الجمعة الموافق 13 أكتوبر العام 2023 أصدر أوامر وإنذارات تحذيرية للسكان بضرورة التهجير القسري والنزوح من أكبر محافظتي في قطاع غزة، ألا وهما محافظة غزة وشمال غزة، حيث وجه إنذارات خلال ساعات لسكان أكثر من 1.5 مليون من المواطنين الموجودين في قطاع غزة إلى ضرورة الإجلاء والإخلاء إلى المحافظات الوسطى والجنوب. فكان هذا أمرا صادما مؤلما قاسيا بالنسبة للسكان الذين تركوا خلفهم منازلهم وأمتعتهم وفراشهم وأخذوا يهربون ويهرولون من الموت باتجاه محافظات الجنوب والوسطى، ليقوم جيش الاحتلال بقتلهم أيضا في محافظات الجنوب والوسطى. فلم يتوقف عند هذا الحد، بل اتبع ذلك عشرات أوامر الإخلاء والتحذير، وآخر هذه الأوامر ما يحدث الآن في محافظة شمال غزة، حيث يقوم جيش الاحتلال بمحاولة الإفراغ الوجودي والتكتل البشري في شمال غزة، ويتم إخراج المواطنين الذين بقيوا في محافظة الشمال باستخدام القوة عن طريق استخدامهم وتربيطهم وإخراجهم عن طريق الآليات العسكرية باتجاه مناطق الجنوب وباتجاه مناطق الوسطى، حيث يقوم بإفراغ كذلك التكتل الخرساني وتدميره بشكل كامل في محافظة شمال غزة، حيث يسعى إلى الخلاص من محافظة شمال غزة كما يتحدث عن خطة الجنرالات، وذلك بتدمير كل شيء في محافظة شمال غزة. الآن هناك أكثر من 100,000 مواطن محاصرين داخل شمال غزة دون ماء دون طعام دون أي علاج صحي. المستشفيات انقصفت، المراكز الرعاية تم إيقافها عن العمل، كذلك الآن يستخدم سلاح الجوع ضد محافظات الوسطى والجنوب. فمنذ أكثر من شهر يقوم بإغلاق المعابر ويمنع منعا باتا دخول أي مواد غذائية داخل القطاع، تاركا المواطنين يغرقون في المجاعة التي خلفت عشرات ممن قتلوا نتيجة الجوع وجلهم من من الأطفال الذين يحتاجون إلى التغذية السريعة، بالإضافة إلى النساء الذين هم يحتاجون إلى رعاية خاصة، وخاصة النساء الحوامل والرضع. كل ذلك إسرائيل تضرب بعرض الحائط الوجود الإنساني والوجود البشري في قطاع غزة، وتواصل إلى الآن ارتكاب أفظع وأكبر المجازر، وخاصة في المناطق التي ادعى بأنها إنسانية. والجميع رأى استهداف الخيام والمواطنين داخل الخيام في منطقة مواصي غرب غزة، حيث تم قصف الخيام وهي مكونة من بضعة من القماش بصواريخ ذات قدرات تدميرية عالية، مما أدى إلى دفن هذه الخيام بما فيها من مواطنين إلى عشرات الأمتار داخل الأرض، وبعضهم لا زال جثثهم موجودة إلى الآن داخل الرمال دون القدرة على الوصول إليها أو إخراجها أو انتشالها أو دفنها. كل هذه الجرائم تقوم دولة الاحتلال بارتكابها وفعلها على مرأى ومسمع من العالم، ولم تقف إلى هذا الحد، كما منعت من دخول مواد التنظيف إلى قطاع غزة من أجل جعل قطاع غزة بؤرة أوبئة، مما أدى إلى انتشار الأوبئة بشكل كبير داخل مراكز الإيواء، والتي هي بالأساس مدارس تتبع لوكالة الأنروا أو مدارس تتبع الصف الحكومي في قطاع غزة، حيث كانت هذه المراكز تأوي الآلاف داخل المدرسة من السكان. ونتيجة عدم إدخال مواد التنظيف أدى إلى انتشار كافة أنواع الأمراض والأوبئة، ولا سيما التهاب الكبد الوبائي، بالإضافة إلى الجدري، بالإضافة إلى الجرب، مما أدى إلى إصابة أكثر من 1,700,000 من المواطنين بالأوبئة، وذلك حسب منظمة الصحة العالمية. ولم تقف إلى هذه الحد، بل قامت إلى أبعد من ذلك باستهداف مراكز الإيواء وقصفها، وكان هناك أكثر من 100 مدرسة تحمل علم الأنورا تم قصفها، وتم قتل عدد كبير من المواطنين والآمنين داخل المدرسة. وفي الأيام الأخيرة كل العالم شاهد قرارات وتشريعات الكنيست بحظر أنشطة الأنورا في قطاع غزة، مما يهدد حياة أكثر من 2 مليون إنسان في قطاع غزة، من تلقي المساعدات اللازمة، من تلقي خدمات العلاج والصحة والتعليم الذي عمل الاحتلال على إنهاء التعليم منذ اليوم الأول لحرب الإبادة الجماعية. فالمسيرة التعليمية واقفة، وكذلك أخرج عدد كبير من المباني والمراكز الصحية عن العمل. كل ذلك أصبح في أعين ونظر العدو أو الاحتلال الإسرائيلي، كل ذلك مستهدف في قطاع غزة. وإذا عندما نتحدث عن الأرقام وطبيعة الأرقام في قطاع غزة، دعونا أتحدث سريعا في جزئية الأرقام أو الإحصائيات عن الخسائر البشرية. نحن نتحدث عن الاحتلال منذ اليوم الأول وعند مدة عام قد قتل أكثر من 43,000 بالإضافة إلى 160 مواطن تقريبا، وقد أصيب أكثر من 106,000 مواطن نتيجة حرب الإبادة الجماعية. نحن نتحدث عن نسبة تقريبا حوالي 7% من سكان قطاع غزة تعرضوا للإصابة أو للقتل. نحن نتحدث عن أكثر من 10,000 مفقود، وهم ممن بقيت جثثهم عالقة في الشوارع، وممن بقيت جثثهم تحت الأنقاض أو تم دفنهم في مقابر لا يعلمها إلا الاحتلال، لا يستطيع أحد انتشالهم. عندما نتحدث عن دفن جثامين الشهداء، نحن نتحدث عن أكثر من 120 موقع دفن عشوائي قام الأهالي والمواطنين بدفن جثث الشهداء داخل أفنية المنازل، داخل أو على أبواب المحلات التجارية، في الشوارع، لعدم وجود مقابر يلجؤون إليها. ونحن نتحدث أيضا بلغة الأرقام نتحدث عن مئات من الكوادر الطبية تم قتلهم واعتقالهم، بالإضافة إلى أكثر من 170 صحفي تم قتلهم، وذلك من أجل منع الصورة وحجب الصوت عن العالم. نحن نحن نتحدث عن أكثر من 10,000 مفقود. أيضا نحن نتحدث عن أكثر من 1,700,000 تعرضوا لأوبئة. نحن نتحدث عن الآلاف ممن يموتون نتيجة إغلاق المعابر وعدم السماح للمرضى وخاصة مرضى الأمراض المزمنة من مثل السرطان والكلى من السفر والخروج من قطاع غزة لتلقي الرعاية الصحية اللازمة. عندما نتحدث عن الخسائر المادية نحن نتحدث عن أكثر من 86% من مجموع المباني الخرسانية أو الكتلة الخرسانية الموجودة في قطاع غزة تم تدميرها بشكل كامل بما تحتويه من منازل وبنية تحتية، من مرافق عامة، من مستشفيات، من مراكز تقديم الصحة والرعاية، بالإضافة إلى مباني البلدية، بالإضافة إلى الدفاع المدني، بالإضافة إلى بنية تحتية وما تحتويه من أبار مياه وشبكات صرف صحي وشوارع. كل ذلك قام الاحتلال بتدميره وتطهيره بشكل كامل. حتى إلى الآن أكثر من 86% من البنية الخرسانية. نحن نتحدث على حسب البنك الدولي عن أكثر من 430 ألف وحدة سكنية تم تدميرها. نحن نتحدث عن أكثر من 900 مسجد، نتحدث عن أكثر من 3 كنائس تم تدميرهم بشكل كامل. نتحدث عن أكثر من 200 مدرسة تم إلحاق الضرر سواء كليا أو جزئيا. نحن نتحدث عن أكثر من 101 مستشفى أو مركز صحي تم استهدافهم أو إلحاق الضرر بهم وإخراجهم عن الخدمة. كل هذه الأرقام نتيجة حرب الإبادة الجماعية على قطاع غزة منذ أكثر من عام إلى الآن، حيث يمثل نسبة الأطفال والنساء من حجم الضحايا الذين قتلوا أكثر من 70%، وهم الفئة الأكثر هشاشة في المجتمع، والذي يحرم القانون الدولي ولا سيما القانون الدولي الإنساني من قتلهم والعمل على المحافظة على حمايتهم وحماية أرواحهم. ولكن دولة الاحتلال تجعل من كل شيء هدفا لها وتقوم بقتل كل شيء في قطاع غزة. هذه صورة الوضع خلال عام كامل على قطاع غزة من حرب الإبادة الجماعية. هذه البؤرة الصغيرة والقطعة الصغيرة من أراضي الفلسطينية المحتلة التي تساوي مجموعة 360 كيلو متر على خط طول 41 كيلو متر، وهي أقل من ماراثون رياضي المسافة في أي دولة من العالم. وكذلك على خط عرض تقريبا 4 إلى 7 كيلو متر هي مسافة المشي الطبيعية لأي مواطن في الصفاح. نحن نتحدث عن مساحة جغرافية صغيرة جدا وأكثر منطقة مكتظة في العالم يتم إلقاء عليها أكثر من 86 ألف طن من المتفجرات والديناميت في أعلى كمية متفجرات تسقط على بقعة صغيرة. كل ذلك يحدث في عصر الألوان وأمام مرأى ومسمع العالم دون اكتراث لهذه الجرائم. هذه صورة الوضع. أتمنى من العالم أن يسمع ما يحدث ليقف عند كل ذلك حدوده وليمنع من تمادي الاحتلال من ارتكاب مجازرها التي مستمرة إلى الآن. فإلى الآن نحن نعيش ظروف الجوع، ظروف القتل، ظروف القهر، ظروف العيش في الخيام. نحن نتحدث عن أكثر من 130 ألف خيمة موجودة في محافظات الجنوب تحوي أكثر من 130 عائلة تعيش في ظروف مأساوية نتيجة الشتاء ونتيجة عدم وجود خدمات ونتيجة عدم توفر أي مياه أو كهرباء. نحن نعيش بشكل عشوائي دون صرف صحي، دون مكب نفايات. نحن نعيش الأوبئة كل يوم فكل لحظة. هذه صوتنا ويعطيكم العافية.
Thank you, Osama, for interpreting these absolutely chilling words. I have no words. I feel sick. I feel shame that this is the US funded bombs and guns that are doing this. I'm and I'm so grateful that he was able to reach us from Gaza to really tell us what is going on. And those numbers are so different than what we hear, definitely from mainstream media and even from other outlets. So this has to end. This has to end now. I think someone just wrote that in the chat. Okay, we do have a fourth panelist to speak with us today. Ala Srouji from Awda Center, Director, Palestinian refugee in Tulkarem refugee camp in the West Bank. Thank you so much, Ala, also for being here. Shukran. شكرا.
يعطيكم العافية جميعا، وسعيد جدا بتواجدي معكم اليوم من مخيم طول كرم للاجئين. طبعا بالتزامن مع حرب الإبادة الجماعية على قطاع غزة، يواصل الاحتلال عدوانه وانتهاكاته بحق اللاجئين بمخيمات الضفة الغربية، وحول المخيمات لأماكن غير صالحة للسكن في خطوة تهدف لتهجير وضرب عنوان رئيسي من عناوين القضية الفلسطينية، اللي هو حق العودة. إذا بدنا نحكي عن مخيمات الضفة الغربية وتحديدا شمال الضفة الغربية، مخيمات جنين وطول كرم والفارعة وبلاطة وعسكر، صراحة بات من الصعب المشي في شوارع وأزقة هذه المخيمات أو العيش فيها، بسبب عمليات التدمير والهدم الإسرائيلي للبيوت والبنية التحتية التي تصاعدت بالتزامن عند حرب الإبادة الجماعية على قطاع غزة قبل عام. هذه الاقتحامات وغيرها في الضفة الغربية أسفرت عن استشهاد أكثر من 770 فلسطيني، وإصابة أكثر من 6000 فلسطيني، 200 ومنهم طبعا 10 سيدات و9 مسنين، بالإضافة ل 160 طفل في خلال هاي الفترة الأخيرة حسب إحصائيات وزارة الصحة. من هؤلاء ال 770 في أكثر من 195 استشهدوا في مخيم جنين ومحافظة جنين، و172 استشهدوا في محافظة طول كرم ومخيمات طول كرم، ومخيم نور شمس أيضا في طول كرم، و57 منهم في طوباس، و72 منهم في مخيمات نابلس. وعدا عن حملات الاعتقال اللي طالت الشباب والنساء أيضا في هذه المخيمات، بالتأكيد يعني أنه هاي الاقتحامات والاعتداءات المتكررة لمخيمات شمال الضفة الغربية، وهين ممكن أحكي بالتفصيل أكثر عن مخيم طول كرم ونور شمس. هناك أكثر من 300 اقتحام واعتداء على المخيمين. كان في دمار لأكثر من 200 منزل، دمار كلي داخل هؤلاء المخيمين، بالإضافة لأكثر من 2500 منزل دمروا بشكل جزئي نتيجة اعتداءات الاحتلال المتكررة على البيوت وعمليات الاقتحام المتكررة على منازل اللاجئين داخل المخيمين، بالإضافة تدمير البنية التحتية بشكل كامل داخل المخيمات، منها شبكات الصرف الصحي، شبكات المياه، شبكات الإنترنت والكهرباء. فأصبحت هذه المخيمات خالية، غير قادرة، غير صالحة للعيش الآدمي، في محاولة من الاحتلال لتفريغ هذه المخيمات وتهجير أبنائها هجرة أخرى بعد هجرة 48. إسرائيل بتعتبر أن الضفة الغربية أصبحت ساحة عمليات عسكرية، وأنه بعد 7 أكتوبر تعتبر فرصة لاستكمال تهويد الضفة الغربية وزيادة الاستيطان وطرد الفلسطيني من أرضه، وهو ما ظهر خلال تكثيف الهجمات الإسرائيلية وهجمات الاحتلال على محافظات الضفة الغربية، وأيضا على المخيمات وتحديدا مخيمات شمال الضفة الغربية. إلى جانب عمليات القتل والتنكيل، بتعتمد قوات الاحتلال أو الاحتلال بتدمير البنية التحتية وإحداث أضرار بالغة في الشوارع الرئيسية والفرعية في المخيمات وبمحيطها، وبتحفر الشوارع أكثر من متر، مما يتسبب بإتلاف شبكات المياه والصرف الصحي والكهرباء والاتصالات، تدمير منازل المواطنين، وتحطيم كل ما يأتي بطريق هذه الآليات بهدف أيضا تدمير البنية التحتية. وهذا جزء من الاستراتيجية الإسرائيلية الأوسع، اللي بتهدف إلى تهجير اللاجئين والتخلص من الكتل السكانية. وبتعتقد إسرائيل أنها بتعتمد على ذلك من خلال هذا التدمير. وهي كمان وسيلة للانتقام الجماعي من سكان المخيمات، وهذه استراتيجية بتقوم على فرض عقوبات جماعية وإثارة الرعب والهلع بين السكان المدنيين. الاقتحامات المتكررة على المخيمات في شمال الضفة الغربية سببت أحدثت كثير من المشاكل، انعكست على الأطفال داخل المخيمات، على الشباب، على المسنين داخل المخيمات. المسنين أصبحوا غير قادرين على الوصول إلى العيادات الصحية داخل المخيم. الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة غير قادرين على الوصول إلى العيادات وتلقي العلاج اللازم بسبب تدمير وخراب البنية التحتية اللي أحدث الاحتلال. بالإضافة ايضا انه موضوع التعليم، الاحتلال بيحاول كمان تدمير المؤسسات التعليميه. في مخيم طولكرم حفر الشوارع الرئيسيه امام المدارس، واصبح من الصعب وصول الاطفال الى مدارسهم والالتحاق في على مقاعد الدراسه داخل مدارس الأونروا. بالإضافة مثلا في مخيم من شمس هدم مكتب إدارة وكالة الغوث الأونروا في محاولة منه لاستمرار سياسته في إنهاء الأونروا وملف الأونروا تمهيدا لإنهاء حق العودة. طبعا هاي السياسات الإسرائيلية مش جديدة، بل تمتد جذورها لعقود من السياسات اللي تهدف إلى إعادة تشكيل الخريطة الديمغرافية للضفة الغربية من خلال تقليص عدد السكان الفلسطينيين في المناطق الاستراتيجية، وتحويل هذه المناطق إلى مناطق معزولة ومفككة وبسهل السيطرة عليها ضمن خطة إسرائيلية ممنهجة لذلك. طبعا كل هذا الدمار في البنية التحتية في المخيمات يعد انتهاك واضح لكل المعاهدات والمواثيق الدولية وكل البروتوكولات اللي بتنادي فيها المنظمات العالمية اللي بتتعلق بحماية المدنيين خلال النزاعات. وهي هجمات طبعا متكررة من الاحتلال يجب وقفها بشكل فوري، وعلى الجميع تحمل مسؤولياته تجاه حملة العقاب الجماعي اللي بيمارسه الاحتلال الإسرائيلي ضد شعبنا الفلسطيني، وتحديدا في مخيمات الضفة الغربية وفي قطاع غزة. وهي صورة مصغرة مما يحدث في مخيمات شمال الضفة الغربية، وتحديدا مخيم طول كرم ومخيم نور شمس. بالإضافة أنه في اعتداءاته المتواصلة على المخيمات وعلى اللاجئين داخل المخيمات، بحاول الاحتلال أيضا ضرب كل ما هو حي داخل هذه المخيمات من خلال قطع المياه عن المخيمات. يعني في مخيمات طولكرم والشمس الاحتلال وجرافات الاحتلال بتحاول انها تقطع شبكات المياه عن المخيم. في 28 ألف لاجئ بيعيشوا بانقطاع خلال انقطاع عملية المياه بدون مياه لمدة شهر وشهرين حتى يتم إصلاح شبكات هذه المياه. بالإضافة إلى أنه تدمير ودمار بعض البيوت داخل المخيمات بيؤدي إلى نزوح العديد من العائلات. هنالك عائلات كثيرة داخل المخيم لا يوجد لها مأوى، فبتضطر أنه تقوم باستئجار أماكن أخرى خارج المخيمات. وهي هدف سياسي للاحتلال لتفريغ المخيمات الفلسطينية وإنهاء ملف حق العودة. وشكرا جزيلا لكم جميعا.
Thank you so much. شكرا. أنا بكلم شوية عربي مش كتير. But I thank you so much for being here. And there was some people just discussing in the chat how much they appreciate Osama, also you being here to translate and interpret for us these words. This horrific genocide has to end. And we would like now to open up to our webinar group for questions, unless there is anything else that the four of you would like to say to each other or to us at this moment.
I just wanted to mention, Julie, that we had recorded the video of Hazim as a just in case, because sometimes it's very difficult, as you all know, because sometimes there is communication blackouts in the Gaza Strip. And so unfortunately for this, we've had Hazim speak with us or come on webinars with us before. But this time around, I guess he didn't have connection, or he didn't have the capacity to be with us today. So I'm glad that we had the video. Of course, it would have been better if we had Hazim in person, but unfortunately, there is not that much we could do about that. But we will do our best to answer any questions that the participants have. And we thank them for being here as well.
Yes, thank you. Now, there were some questions in the chat. Is Hazim safe? He looks very thin.
As you know, Israel has been very rigorous with obstructing not only the entry of goods, but also obstructing the work of the UN agencies. So even if there are goods coming in, they are restricting and obstructing the work of UNRWA. So UNRWA is not able to distribute the goods, and other international agencies are not able to distribute the goods. So the starvation and famine in the Gaza Strip, particularly in the north, is extreme. Now, Hazim, as far as I know, he is in the, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the Mughazi refugee camp, which is in the south. So there are some aid being delivered there, but I am sure also that he would probably, if he does have food, then he would offer it to his family before he would take it himself.
Well, thank you very much for helping to the technology and having him sort of be here in spirit with us. And we are thinking of him and his family and all of Palestine. And I think I'm going to open this up for questions now. Sometimes we put questions in the chat, and sometimes we hear voices of the other people, and we've decided to hear other people's voices. So I will call on Richard to start with.
Hi, can you hear me? Cole, for the record, I'm actually Jeffrey Bartel. I don't know what happened to make to do this. To be honest, I don't know what happened. Just don't kick me out, okay, please? All right. My name is Jeffrey Bartel. I wanted to get in a hurry, so I found a do I have time to explain what the situation, or should I just skip to the question? Okay. Okay.
Go ahead and
Now,
ask your question, Jeffrey.
okay. Cole, first off, Cole, can you provide me with a recording, the transcript, and the chat box of this Zoom meeting?
Why don't you
First,
why don't you ask your question now, Jeffrey?
okay. Secondly, you said the Israel attacked the United Nations, right? Right, right, for just trying to transport. First off, why don't they do why don't they why don't they try dropping supplies into the Gaza Strip? And secondly, why can't the United Nations declare war against Israel like they did with North Korea when they invaded South Korea in 1950s? Those are my two questions.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey.
Are
think-
we going to take more than one, or
Yeah.
do you want me to go ahead and maybe comment on those questions?
Sure, thank
Okay.
you.
There were airdrops. If you recall, the US did not only airdrops, but they also did like a maritime corridor where they actually built a supposed corridor in the ocean to bring the aid in. First of all, both of those things are completely inefficient and more costly than it would be if they just opened one land crossing to get the aid through. Now, even with the maritime corridor and the airdrops, they would still need someone to distribute the food. So it comes and it needs to be distributed throughout the Gaza Strip. So even if there were airdrops and the food got in, they would still need a distribution method. And UNRWA is the only agency that has the capacity and the mandate to be able to do that. In addition, with the airdrops, some of them actually fell on people. They were dropped on people and killed them. Okay. So this is why airdrops and even the maritime corridor is not a solution. The solution is to open the crossings, to let the aid go in, and to have UNRWA distribute the aid in order for everyone to get the aid that they need. The second question, why don't they declare war? Because there's no political will. Because of the hegemony, the domination of the United States and its colonial allies, the US, the UK, the EU, Germany, France, and so on and so forth, they have killed basically all the accountability mechanisms that could be potentially used. And so without the political will, the accountability mechanisms are useless. So this is why we need direct actions on the ground to pressure governments into compliance with their obligations according to international law, in order for them to be forced to impose sanctions on Israel, because that is the only way we will be able to get Israel to stop doing international crimes and genocide. Because if there are no consequences, if Israel's always getting the green light from the international community, then it's going to continue doing what it's been doing because there are no consequences.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lubna. Pat.
Yes. First, note that this is heartbreaking. I am not alone in being so terribly, terribly sorry about what our government is supporting. And many of us follow lots of different media and share the news that we get from that media with our members of Congress, with our friends and families, and the people that we organize with across the country. I understand the most important thing to do is to get, for us in the United States, is to get our country to stop sending weapons and to stop supporting Israel in the United Nations and everywhere else where we do that. We are trying to do that. We're up against such strong powers that it's been very hard and very slow. We will not stop doing that. Meanwhile, there are people saying donate to this group or to that, to UNRWA, whatever, to send food into Gaza. And I'm wondering if you have some suggestions for other things that we could do that support you while we try to get our country to stop supporting Israel.
We at BADIL think that, yes, there should be support to UNRWA because strategically speaking and in the long term, not only is UNRWA a right for Palestinian refugees, but Palestinian refugees need UNRWA. And UNRWA is the reason that UNRWA is being targeted is because Israel wants to eliminate the refugee issue. And so we do ask that you support UNRWA. We also ask that you escalate your direct actions. We need to think more strategically and effectively about what buttons we can push, what pressure we can put on governments. And so, as I said, even though the international solidarity movement has done fantastic things and they have been working very hard, and we have seen all of these efforts, the boycott has been phenomenal. The divestment has been phenomenal. But we need to escalate those things to the point that we get sanctions, which is what the governments need to put in place. And then finally, I would ask that you also support BADIL. BADIL has an online fundraising campaign. I can put the links in the chat box, but you can also go to our website and there's a donate button there. BADIL is facing a significant amount of restrictions and a significant amount of obstacles to funding, as are many Palestinian organizations, but BADIL in particular, because we are rejecting politically conditional funding. And so we have a semi-existential crisis happening. So we are asking also that you donate to us as well.
Right. When I was in Palestine years ago, 2008, I've been many times since then, I actually visited BADIL, and someone from BADIL spoke to our delegation, and it was very powerful. And I thank you very much for the work that you're doing. And I guess, as we all have heard and know, you're putting yourselves at risk to speak up and criticize the Israeli government. So thank you also for your courage.
Thank you so much.
I think we'll go on to the next question by, I think Peter Schultz had something to say.
Oh, yes, thank you. And thank you for this great program. I'm just wondering what people think about the chance of Israel trying to take complete control of northern Gaza and settle it and not let any Palestinians back in. Thank you.
That has been Israel's goal from the beginning. Israel is a colonial entity. It was created as a Western colonial entity. So it's going to continue to expand its colonization. And so it's not going to be satisfied with the colonization that it did from 1948 onward. And it's not going to be satisfied with the occupation of 1967, which they did in order to colonize the territory of 1967. And so they're going to continue the colonial expansion. And what they've done, from what I've understood, is that that whole northern area of the Gaza Strip is going to become completely empty. So the 400,000 or so Palestinians that remained in the north this whole time, they are now either physically forcing them to leave, or they are exterminating them. And they are wiping out everything that's in them. And if you look also to what's happening in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon, they are also expanding their colonization into Lebanon because they want to clear the whole southern area of Lebanon as well, though as it butts up against the current so-called borders of Israel. Now, Israel is one of the only entities that does not have recognized borders. Its borders fluctuate. And this is because it is a colonial entity. It is a colonial entity that is expanding its colonial enterprise into other areas. And so this is what we're seeing today is the progression or the escalation of this colonization because there has been no accountability from the get-go. And that is what the genocide is, the culmination of that lack of accountability and support that Israel has been receiving.
Can we also add, sorry, regarding the West Bank as well, we've seen a lot of news lately about the annexation of the West Bank. And here on the ground, we've been hearing about just around Bethlehem, the city of Bethlehem, several villages like BADIL, which is a UNESCO protected village, you know, and it's under threat of confiscation of the entire area, displacing the people, the Palestinian people who have always lived there, who are supposed to be protected by international law. And yet we're seeing that villages are being taken over little by little. And this is continuous. This has been continuous, and no one has put an end to the illegal settlements that are being built on even the parts that were internationally recognized as Palestinian land. And again, it goes back to the accountability, not holding Israel accountable for their continuous displacement of Palestinian people and confiscation of Palestinian land.
Thank you. Thank you for answering these questions. And Donnie, do you have a question, Donnie?
Yes. My name is Dania Velar. I'm a journalist from Brazil. I work for mainstream media. And throughout the last 14 months, it has truly been like just so much grief having to witness not only all the images that we're seeing, but like my personal case, losing sources and colleagues in Gaza. Like I don't have family there, but knowing people that are dying or are at risk of dying in this genocide, and just the amount of self-censorship and intimidation that we are facing in the industry is like, of course, it does not compare to what Palestinians are enduring. But I do feel that this much grief has rendered many of us paralyzed somehow. And I know this is not an objective question, but it's always truly an honor to listen from Palestinians. So how are you able to process this much grief and allow it to give us hope, or at least make us angry enough to move towards changing things on the ground? So once again, thanks Mapa, thanks Lubnah and the other speakers, the translators. It's truly been an honor. And yeah.
I mean, that's a really hard question. I can only speak for myself and say that we don't process. I mean, if I allowed myself to actually sit with what is happening and what I am seeing happen to my people, I don't think I would be able to function whatsoever. So no, I mean, we don't have the time, and we can't afford to process. And of course, this is a terrible coping mechanism, obviously, but yeah. In order to be able to do what we do, And in order to be able to continue going out there and watching and looking at the news and processing it and putting our analysis out there, we have to kind of do it from a distance, from an emotional distance to a certain extent, because if we really let it enter what we see, the burning of our people, the abuse of our people, the rape of our people, it's not something that I mean, I think we're all going to need so much therapy, so much therapy and so much trauma later on. But we have to push through. We have to push through because we have to bring it to an end. And we have to do that as soon as possible. We have to do that as soon as possible because we need to begin healing. We all need to begin. We all need to begin healing, and we can't do that until we get it to stop. And just the, I know that it's been difficult for media, and Israel is particularly targeting the media because of course they don't want the scenes and the stories and what the reality is to get out there. So we need all the media to step up. The media really does need to step up, and alternative media and social media has been doing it, but they're also being blocked and obstructed as well. And so we need mainstream media to kind of really, take a stand and push back on that pressure. I know that there's pressure on them. I know that they are being censored and put, not allowed to say things the way they're supposed to be said. And we need that pushback there as well. So we need media also to have courage, and we thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Donnie. I think we have time for a few more questions, as long as the speakers are okay with that. I know there's a time difference. Our next question comes from Karishma Manzoor.
Hi there. So I just wanted to add on to the question about the airdrops. So the C-130 planes, even if they're full of humanitarian aid, are extremely inefficient. I believe all those airdrops ended up dropping only about 946 tons, less than 1,000 tons of humanitarian aid, whereas 350 trucks, which are about 7,000 tons of humanitarian aid, are required on a daily basis to sustain the 2 million people in Gaza. So that was one response I wanted to say about the airdrops. The second thing I wanted to ask you was the concept of ersatz Israel, which Smotrich and Ben Gvir are pushing, along with the ultra-right-wing Likud party. So it's not just going to be from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, it's going to be actually from the Euphrates to the Nile, which is actually a much larger region. And Lubnah just did talk about colonial expansion, but it's not just into Gaza and the West Bank. It's actually going to be much farther out. It's going to be parts of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan. So, and that is being, of course, supported by the evangelical church in the United States, because then the Messiah will arrive, whatever else they believe in. It is far greater problem. So how do larger institutions like the Vatican or the Orthodox Church, where do they stand? Are they supporting the international solidarity movement? Are they supporting the evangelical and Israeli right-wing movement?
I don't think they have been as supportive as they could be. I think that they are also politically influenced by the political context or the lack of political will. I honestly don't have that much knowledge in that regard. I haven't been following what the Vatican has been saying or what the Greek Orthodox Church has been saying, but I can say that if they have voices or if they have made certain positions or stances, they are not known to me. And I can also say that they are not as boisterous, let's say, in their positions as the Zionist Christian groups who are supportive of Israel. So there's, yeah.
Thank you, Lubna. I'll look into that about the Vatican. And can you talk a little bit about the Assad's Israel plan? I don't know if you know of it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. I mean, as a colonial entity, of course, the whole foundation of it is expansion, is colonial expansion. And because Israel is a colonial apartheid regime, the only way to end that expansion or to end the coloniality and the apartheid is to dismantle it. And the only way to dismantle it is through sanctions, in the same way that former apartheid South Africa was dismantled, through sanctions. The momentum of the international solidarity movement, the public will of the people, created enough pressure on the governments to create the political will to impose the sanctions. And this is what allowed or forced the fall of the regime. And then it was, rebuilt. The government was rebuilt after that. So we need the sanctions to happen in order to stop any further Israeli colonization and to decolonize what has been colonized. And I did want to mention one more thing, particularly about the West Bank and the plans to divide it into 3 sections. So apparently, Smotrich, I believe, wants to divide the West Bank into 3 sections: north, center, and south. And the sections will not be able to go in. For example, a person like me in the Bethlehem area will not be able to go to the north, for example, to see Ala in Tulkarem, because I will need a permit. And I will be going from a Palestinian area to a Palestinian area. So not only are we not able to go into, we have to have permits to go into Jerusalem and into the territory, the 1948 territory that is colonized, but now we will need permits to move within the West Bank itself. And this is in addition to what Mejd was talking about, which is I blanked out on the name, the checkpoints that are already there. And I think that since the genocide started, there have been over 100 additional checkpoints. I'm not sure about the exact number, but over 100 additional checkpoints put into the West Bank, in addition to the ones that already existed, which I think are like 600 or 700 or 800 or something like this. It's in the high hundreds number. So yeah, there will be, and that plan, the divisions and the permits and stuff, is another way to transfer Palestinians, to make the life so hard that the area is ethnically cleansed. People are forced to leave. And so then the colonies can expand further and further and further.
I think we'll take a question from Layla Cable.
Hi, I want to thank everyone for speaking. I'm Palestinian from Nablus originally, and mom from Bethlehem, and lived in Jerusalem. Since 42, the invasion of Lebanon, I started my activism and established many groups for education, showing films, showing up at events, demonstrating, making a point, writing, speaking, endless. And well, we were sometimes speaking to the converted. We were not able to reach outside the circle of the groups that we were speaking with, because really it's the country is not an open field where you can talk to different groups. There's lots of forces in the US. So I was a teacher. Of course, I was teaching all at the same time, doing all this work and raising 3 kids. I started working with teachers on social justice issues in the US. And one way we could reach people was to reach the people who are suffering here, who are also able to understand a situation somewhere else that an average American is not able to fathom. So for 20 years, I've worked with different groups, Black Lives Matter at school, which is different than Black Lives Matter. I worked with TAGS, teacher activist groups, and then I established ethnic studies, and from that, BTU for Palestine. And we just won our resolution that we presented to the union, in spite of the fact that the other side brought dozens of people to speak and weep and sob, saying they will be hurt if weapons were not sent to Israel. So basically, I think what we need is to speak to the people who are labor. This is a labor issue. I'm in the union, and this is what I did in my union. I tried to force it on the big union because I'm an elected delegate to the AFT National. They shut me down. I tried at the AFT Massachusetts, but we succeeded in AFT Boston, which is the BTU. And because we are now linked with so many other unions, labor unions, who are signing onto these things, I think we need to push for this. We need all the people working for Palestine to work with the labor, with the teachers, with the students, because people my age, some of them are great and are honest and are working for the cause, but most of them are not interested. The other thing I think I would want to ask, this would be a question, is I think the boycott should come to the US. The US should be boycotted. And we need people in the Middle East to push the Arab countries and other countries to start a boycott of the US. That's going to affect us financially. But I think unless if the US starts going down financially, it's not going to pay attention. And if people start realizing that this money that we're dishing out there, we've already given 22 billion as of this date, and they want 18 more billion in the next week. And we're fighting it with the GRDs through Bernie and through the resolution and through the unions. But we need the Arabs and other nations to boycott the US, because the US is actually, sorry to say, the head of the snake. It's the country that's fighting wars all over the place. It's the country that supports this and supports the ethnic cleansing. I think they think this would be great for all the Europeans who want to migrate into a nicer climate. I'm starting to see a bigger picture. This is not just about Zionism and Israel. This is the Western colonialism rising up and saying something different. And we need to kind of wake people up now before it's too late for Palestinians and for the others in the region. So what do you think? Is that possible to start a boycott movement of the United States government and the banking and all the other nonsense we have?
I know the question wasn't to me, but I absolutely 100% am on board, Layla. Boycott the US. Yes, we should. From within.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you said something very, very important there. Without material cost, if it doesn't become financially not feasible to continue to support Israel, then they will stop supporting Israel. So we have to make that happen. And I think that going through the labor unions, and I think that the ideas that you had are excellent. And because it has to get them where it hurts, and that's in their pockets. Now, I will go on the record and say that I have very, very little expectation, let me say, from the Arab countries, because they are just in so deep. Unfortunately, they are in so deep, most of them, with the exception, of course, of a few like Yemen. So at least we have Yemen.
Yeah.
But yes, a lot of those corporations, a lot of those companies and private corporations that are supporting Israel are multinational companies, and so they have bases, in the U.S., in Israel, in other colonial states. So definitely, boycotting is good, but we need more effective, I think, and more concentrated or more targeted boycott.
Right. One of the groups I established, which lasted from 2004 until 2014, was called the Somerville Divestment Project. It was before the one called from the Palestinians in the West Bank. We put ballot questions on the elections: Cambridge, Somerville, Newton, Chelsea, Waltham, and Somerville a second time, and I believe another town. I'm not sure. I wasn't then at the end. And we put ballot questions that asked the people, do you believe Palestinians should have the rights to live free of aggression and in their own lands? Do you believe Palestinians are entitled to have water that's from under their feet? And people, even when we got 35%, I took it as a success, because we distributed hundreds of thousands of leaflets. I walked the streets knocking at doors, and we got, in a couple of cities, we got 45%, 50%, and then we got 60% in Somerville. So I think these things should be restarted. I'm not going to start a new project. I'm going to be 79 this coming birthday, and I have my hands full with 2 other projects, and I'm also trying to write my memoir, because I think our stories need to be heard, story of me and my family. It's not tragic, my story, but it's a human story, and we need to spread these things. We need people to see us as human beings. My children, in the schools, were called terrorists, and I have 3. I lost one, he died a few years ago. 3 blonde kids, because they said their mom was Palestinian, they were called terrorists. And it's something because people do not see us as human. And this is very important to do. If anybody tell them to write, whether in the West Bank, in Gaza, in the US, because stories we write will be heard, and that makes more effect a lot of times than political statements. But thank you very much for your.
Thank you, Layla. I know we are running short on time. Why don't we call last question from Deborah Hannon, since she has not yet spoken. You're muted.
Unmuted. Okay.
Yeah.
The Pope, thank God, has been very outspoken: ceasefire, humanitarian aid. I think the Vatican is one of the only countries that does recognize Palestine. And I have families that were a family in my family, within my family, I have a huge extended family, that were missionaries, Orthodox missionaries in Eskimo villages, and they are very much concerned about Palestine. And I think that the United States bishops have written a letter just asking for a ceasefire, humanitarian aid. We have a lot of Catholic organizations like Catholic Worker Dorothy Day, Catholic Worker Communities, Dominican Sisters for Peace. Unfortunately, I think people aren't like the Jewish Voice for Peace or my Muslim brothers and sisters speaking out. And that's been very discouraging for me. And then I have a sister who worked with Mother Teresa. And I know that a lot of people, I'm going to start crying, but a lot of people feel like completely emasculated, like I don't make a difference, one voice. And I always tell people, you can make a voice. My sister worked with somebody who was in poor health, taking a dying person off a street. We our small offering done with great love has great import. And then the last thing is, I have to say, I was involved for 35 years as a leader in the evangelical church. And I'm sorry that my brother, I'm in the Roman church as a revert through the dying process for my new husband, but I am sorry And I don't know exactly all the reasons why Palestinians aren't given the same honor and grace that other people are. And it's beyond disturbing, and it's demonic, and it's satanic. And watching Mike Pence sign a bomb, it just I was a leader of March for Jesus, 15,000 people over 15 years ago, and yet all these people supporting, and I'm just saying I'm sorry. I'm very sorry that this has happened. And it's not how I was raised. And there's no words, but I think that prayer, calling your Congress people, writing letters, sending petitions, rallying, gathering people to pray. You know, we're in the trenches doing what we can, and the Lord honors that. Whether you believe in God or not, God sees everything. He sees every tear. And I just want to encourage y'all, even though it's hard and it's heartbreaking, to just keep going like Mother Teresa did. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you for sharing with us, Deborah. Sorry for your loss.
I wanted to ask Jeff Klein if he could speak for a moment.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you to our Palestinian sisters and brothers and all the people who are attending this webinar. We need to translate our grief and anger into action. First of all, to recognize that Israel would not be able to commit the crimes that it is perpetrating right now and historically without the support of the United States, our country, the military, financial, and diplomatic support that we give to enable Israel's genocide. We as Americans, those of us who are Americans, that's our job, to cut off our government support for Israel's crimes. There's a long road ahead for that, but we can make a start right now. Bernie Sanders and others have introduced resolutions in the Senate to cut off new arms, U.S. arms to Israel. And this is one of the first opportunities in Congress to take a stand. In Massachusetts, our Senator Elizabeth Warren has announced that she's in favor of these resolutions and will support them. We haven't yet heard from our other senator, Ed Markey, and he needs to be pressured to do the same. And those of you who live in other states need to reach out to your own senators to support these measures as a start, at least, to say no to more weapons for Israel's crimes and murders in Gaza and the West Bank. In the longer run, of course, that's not enough, but we have to make a start. And this week, next week, that Senate resolution is a place where we can begin that effort. So I see that Cole has put up on the screen and in the chat a way to take action on this, and I hope that all of you who are on this webinar will do so and recognize that it's a long road ahead, and we can't lose our strength and our determination. It took 10 years before sanctions against apartheid South Africa were passed by the U.S. Congress, but that was the final blow. After that, they recognized they had to negotiate a change. So please take action right now and continue to take action as we move forward. And thank you again. Thank you all in Palestine and everyone on this webinar.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I was going to ask Cole if you could spotlight the panelists and if we could all give them a round of maybe turn off the mute. I don't know if we could give a round of applause.
Can I really quick ask one more question real quick?
We unfortunately don't have any time for more questions. We really appreciate the time that you have given us. Thank you. Thank you to.
Well, just in case I put in the chat box for you to answer later on, along with my email to you guys, along with my email to each of you three.
Thank you. Hazim and Allah, thank you. Thank you to Osama, who did the interpreting. Thank you to Jeff Klein for coordinating this, and Cole at MAPPA. So we are going to go onward, and we are going to hold you and your families in our hearts. And we know there will be a free Palestine.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone.